My name is Jake Collins, and the girl who sits next to me in class is Zoe Vance. At Northwood University, Zoe is considered the campus queen, but I've always thought she's more like an algorithm. Try to talk to her about your feelings, and she'll hand you back a data analysis report. Try to guilt trip her, and she'll build a model on the spot to prove your logic is a closed-loop dumpster fire. Everyone thinks she's cold, boring, a total weirdo. Only I know the truth. While the rest of us were still playing checkers, Zoe was playing 5D chess, ready to declare checkmate on the whole stupid world. This is my survival journal, a record of how a normal guy me manages to live next to a human CPU. And I get to watch her take every argument based on I feel like, and pin it to the mat, repeatedly wiping the floor with the data shows. And man, it is deeply satisfying. Jake, pass these down, will you? The class representative, Leo Rossi, slapped a stack of flyers on my desk. His voice had that self-satisfied gravitas of someone doing a good deed. I glanced down. The page told the sob story of some student in another department and was headlined in bold red letters. A call for compassionate giving. At the very bottom, in a heavy black font the student committee had clearly added themselves, was one final line. A minimum donation of $20 is suggested to support a fellow student. I roll my eyes, ready to become a mindless paper-passing drone, but the person next to me, Zoe, reached out and pinched a corner of the stack between two fingers. Her fingers were pale, nails neatly trimmed. This suggestion, Zoe asked, who proposed it? Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion, as precise as a timed signal on a radio. Leo was taken aback for a second, then puffed out his chest. The other class reps, and I discussed it. $20 isn't a lot for most people, but it can really help out a classmate. I see. Zoe nodded. She pulled a single flyer from the stack and took a red pen from her pencil holder. I craned my neck to see. She drew a huge, decisive X through the line about the minimum donation of $20. Then, she wrote a small note beside it. Parameter assumes a logical fallacy. Individual financial capacity is a nonlinear distribution. Forcing a minimum threshold constitutes an invalid data collection method. After writing, she capped the pen and handed the amended flyer back to Leo. Revise this, then distribute, she said. The air in the classroom froze. Leo's face went from pale to red, then from red to a deep, strangled purple. He looked like he'd just seen someone take a red pen to the Declaration of Independence. Zoe, what's your problem? This is about showing a little compassion. A girl stood up to challenge her. Zoe looked up at her. Compassion is a non-equivalent exchange driven by subjective will. Its core value lies in the principle of voluntary participation. By adding the mandatory condition of a minimum of $20, the nature of the act shifts from charitable donation to a levy. She paused, taking a sip from her water bottle. I did not participate in levies of any kind. The girl was speechless. Leo took a deep breath, tried to reason with her. But if everyone only gives a little, it won't be enough to help. I'm thinking about our class's reputation. Flawed logic, Zoe stated. First, the total donation amount is the sum of all individual contributions. This sum is a result, not a prerequisite. You cannot use a preset, inflated outcome to demand a quantitative performance from each individual. Second, class reputation is an abstract concept. It should not be constructed by sacrificing individual choice. Using the collective to coerce the individual is a classic management error that leads to a decline in internal trust. As she spoke, her eyes were unervingly clear. It was as if she wasn't looking at Leo Rossi, but at a math problem full of logical loopholes. Leo's mouth hung open, but no words came out. He was probably thinking, damn, I just wanted people to give more money. How did we end up in a lecture on management theory and internal trust? Finally, our advisor, Mr. Davison, happened to be walking by and smoothed things over. All right, everyone, let's just give what we can. It's the thought that counts. No pressure, no pressure. Mr. Davison took the flyers and crossed out the minimum donation line himself. The crisis was averted. After class, Leo, still scowling, passed out the corrected flyers. When the stack reached me, I took one and offered it to Zoe. She didn't take it. I'm not donating, she said. I blinked. Why not? You said it was fine as long as it was voluntary. Zoe pulled a folder from her desk, opened it, and pushed it in front of me. Inside was a detailed file on the sick student. It was far more comprehensive than the tear-jerking story on the flyer. It included his parents' employers, their estimated income brackets, their health insurance coverage, and even screenshots from his Instagram showing off a new iPhone and a vacation to Cancun. At the end was a summary report. The conclusion: the student's family possessed full capacity for medical payments. The necessity rating for this fundraiser was low. Emotional appeal constituted 95% of the initiative, while actual need accounted for 5%. My capital will only be invested in projects with a higher rate of return or greater necessity, Zoe said, closing the folder and sliding it back in her desk. For instance, she said, looking up at me, buying 2 lattes. What kind do you want? I stared at her calm, beautiful face and suddenly felt that maybe the world was the irrational one, and Zoe was the only sane person in it. There's a girl in our class named Mia. She's cute, but a little too fond of drama. Her life motto seems to be that no crisis is bigger than her latest breakup. Wednesday afternoon, during our free period gym class, Mia blew up our 4-person group chat with a long, gut-wrenching voice memo. I pressed play, and my ears were filled with sobs. Sob. He broke up with me. How could he do this to me? I gave him everything. You guys have to come be with me. I'm all alone under the flagpole on the main quad. I think I'm going to die. Another girl in the chat immediately replied, OMG, sweetie, don't cry. I'm on my way. I sighed and typed, what happened? You guys went on like 2 dates. I regretted it the second I hit send. Sure enough, Mia's next voice memo was aimed squarely at me. Jake, are you even human? So a 2-date relationship isn't a real relationship. You're so heartless. Before I could reply, Zoe, who had been silent until now, sent a message. It was text. Mia, according to the University Code of Conduct, Section 17, loitering around the flagpole is prohibited. Please leave the area immediately. The chat went silent for 3 seconds. Mia sent a single question mark. Zoe continued typing. Furthermore, your current emotional volatility is a normal stress reaction. Psychological studies show that such emotional peaks typically subside within 30 minutes. I recommend deep breathing exercises or a light jog to promote dopamine secretion, which will counteract the negative effects of cortisol. Mia was probably just staring at her phone, dumbfounded. After half a minute, she wrote, Zoe, we're supposed to be friends. I need comfort right now. Define friend, Zoe replied instantly. A friendship is a social contract based on mutual trust and emotional support. However, this support is not unconditional. It requires a dynamic equilibrium between the time cost, emotional cost, and opportunity cost for both parties. I'm on my way to the library to research a paper. This is my scheduled activity. Altering my schedule to accommodate your breakup has too high of an opportunity cost for me. Therefore, I must decline to provide the immediate in-person comfort service. After sending that novel, Zoe glanced at me. Let's go. Library. I was still staring at my phone in stunned silence. In the chat, Mia had posted a full 60-second voice memo of herself wailing. The sound was apocalyptic. She called all of us fakes and said Zoe was a robot with no heart. I felt a little bad. Maybe we should go check on her. I asked Zoe quietly. Zoe didn't even look up as she packed her bag. Unnecessary. What? Last week, she complained in the chat because her new shoes were giving her blisters. I sent her 5 scientifically proven methods for breaking in new shoes and a link to a highly rated anti-blister insert. She replied with a "You're so annoying" sticker. The week before that, she asked me for help with a calculus problem. I compiled the solution steps and all the relevant theorems into a PDF and sent it to her. She has yet to open the file. Zoe zipped up her backpack and stood up. My emotional bank account is not an unlimited line of credit. She has repeatedly provided negative feedback to my offers of emotional and informational support. This indicates that she doesn't require a solution, but rather unproductive emotional mirroring. Such an activity is time-consuming, draining, and yields no positive outcome. My system has assessed that long-term engagement with her is a depreciating asset. Therefore, I am choosing to cut my losses. With that, she slung her backpack over her shoulder and walked out of the classroom, leaving me alone in the wreckage. I suddenly remembered last month when I'd sprained my ankle playing basketball and was laid up in my dorm for a day. Zoe was the one who brought me all 3 meals, complete with a detailed ankle sprain recovery diet and contraindications list. At the bottom of the list, she had added in red ink, source, Journal of Sports Medicine and Nutrition, Vol. 23, Issue 4, cross-reference for 98% accuracy. I looked down at the group chat on my phone. Mia was still raging. She'd written, "I see how you all are, especially you, Zoe, and I actually thought of you as a sister." I quietly typed out a reply. "Hey, sis, weren't you the one who borrowed Zoe's copy of A Brief History of Time? She said the library's about to charge her for it being overdue." The chat, once again, went completely silent. 3 after the Mia incident, Zoe's reputation for being cold-blooded was pretty much set in stone. An anonymous post popped up on the campus subreddit. The title was, "Let's talk about the perfect straight-A goddess who is secretly a selfish monster." The post was thousands of words long. It didn't use her name, but every sentence was a thinly veiled jab at Zoe. It talked about how she ignored classmates' pleas for help, treated friendship like a transaction, and had no school spirit or human warmth. The post was written with such flair that it quickly went viral. The comments section was a cesspool of people piling on. Ugh, people like that are the worst. Think they're better than everyone just because they get good grades. Totally. High IQ, 0 EQ. The real world is going to eat her alive. I bet this is about Zoe Vance from the physics department. I heard she didn't even donate a single dollar to that charity drive. I showed the post to Zoe on my phone, furious. This is so obviously Mia, right? This is disgusting, stabbing you in the back like this. Zoe read the post with the same expression she used to read a lab report. She scrolled through it, her eyes scanning line by line, and then handed my phone back. "The descriptions are fundamentally accurate," she said. I almost choked. Accurate. They're calling you heartless, a freak. From her perspective and level of cognition, my behavioral patterns would indeed lead her to that conclusion, Zoe said calmly. But that's not the point. She opened her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The point is this anonymous post constitutes defamation. Defamation? I leaned in closer. But she never used your name. Unnecessary. Zoe brought up a screen full of dense code. The post mentions 3 specific events: the donation drive, the refusal to offer comfort, and the calculus problem. The individuals directly involved in these 3 events create an extremely narrow target. In legal terms, this is sufficient to establish specific designation. Furthermore, she used terms like goddess and straight-A student, which narrows the pool. There are only 4 women in the physics department who consistently rank in the top 3. Factoring in the other details from the post, the probability of identity match is 99.7%. I stared at the streaming data on her screen, feeling like a complete illiterate. So what are you going to do? Get into a flame war with her on Reddit? Inefficient, and it risks descending into an emotional argument. Zoe corrected herself. Attempting to debate factual logic with someone employing emotional reasoning is like talking to a brick wall. The correct course of action is to bypass her and engage directly with the entity that creates and enforces the rules. As she spoke, she plugged a flash drive in her laptop. A window popped up, showing several files. One was the university digital speech and conduct policy. Another was the subreddit's terms of service. And a third was something I didn't understand, a log file that seemed to be tracking an IP address. What is that? I was lost. I have submitted a formal request to the university's IT department to retrieve the IP address of the original poster. The justification is that the post violates university policy and the platform's terms of service regarding personal attacks. You think the university will actually do anything? They will, Zoe said. Because if they fail to act, and I choose to file a police report, they, as the platform provider, could be held liable. Faced with 2 negative outcomes, they will choose the lesser one, which is to discipline the poster to avoid greater legal risk. I was completely in awe. What in the world was her brain made of? The next morning, the post on the subreddit was gone. In its place was an official announcement from the university administration. It stated that, after investigation, the account Strawberry Puff was found to have published false and malicious statements intended to harm another student. The offense was severe, resulting in a formal university-wide reprimand and a disciplinary mark on the student's record. Pinned below the announcement was a scanned copy of a handwritten apology letter. At the bottom of the letter were 2 words, Mia Evans. Throughout the entire process, Zoe never posted a single reply online. She never even went to confront Mia. She just sat in the classroom, quietly tapped a few keys, and launched a precision-guided missile of institutional justice directly at her opponent's head. At lunch in the dining hall that day, I couldn't help but ask her, "How did you even think to do that?" Zoe picked up a piece of broccoli with her fork and considered the question. "It's simple," she said. "You wouldn't argue with a traffic camera about why it ticketed you for running a red light. You would just go to the DMV and deal with the ticket." Mia was the camera. The university's rules and regulations are the DMV. I never argue with cameras. She went back to eating her lunch. Looking at her, I suddenly realized that everyone who called her cold had it all wrong. Zoe wasn't cold. She was scorching hot. Hot enough to instantly vaporize all the hypocrisy, melodrama, and pointless bullshit in the world. For sophomore year, we had to take electromagnetism. It was brutal. The final was a group project, build a working coil gun model. I was in a group with Zoe and 2 other guys. One of them was named Shane Peterson. Shane was, well, he was a social butterfly, smooth talker, great at schmoozing, terrible at actually doing work. He was half an hour late to our first group meeting. "Sorry, guys, got held up with some SGA stuff. You go ahead and figure out a plan. I'll back you up 100%. At the second meeting, we divided up the tasks. Zoe had already made a detailed flowchart breaking the project into 4 parts: theoretical calculations, materials procurement, circuit design, and model construction. "I'll handle the theory and the circuit," Zoe said. "I could do the construction. I'm pretty good with my hands," the other guy offered. I volunteered. "I'll take care of getting the materials. I know my way around the electronic shops." All eyes turned to Shane. He grinned. "Well, I guess that leaves me with, writing the final report and putting the presentation together. I make a killer PowerPoint." We all knew that was the fluffiest, easiest part of the job, but no one wanted to be the one to say it. Zoe just glanced at him, didn't say a word, and nodded. For the next 2 weeks, the 3 of us were in hell. I ran myself ragged all over town hunting for capacitors and copper wire. The other guy burned his hands multiple times soldering the circuit board in the lab. Zoe was on another level. I saw her in the library late at night more than once, surrounded by equations and diagrams that looked like an alien language. And Shane, he'd vanished off the face of the earth. He'd pop up in the group chat occasionally to send a "You guys are killing it. Keep up the great work" message complete with a flexing bicep emoji. I complained to Zoe in private. "This Shane guy is such a freeloader. Is he just going to swoop in at the end and take credit?" Zoe's reply: "Patience. Let him make the PowerPoint first." 3 days before the deadline, we finished the model. It was crude, but when we tested it, it actually shot a penny across the lab with a satisfying thwip. The 3 of us were so excited we almost hugged. And right on cue, Shane made his grand entrance. He walked into the lab with a tray of coffees and a huge smile. "Hey, legends, you guys look exhausted. Is the model done? You're geniuses." He walked around our creation, making appreciative noises. Then he cleared his throat. "So, just send me all the theoretical calculations and the experimental data, and I'll get started on the report and presentation." Zoe sent him an encrypted, password-protected folder from her laptop. "Password?" Shane asked. "Send me the first draft of your presentation," Zoe said. "I need to evaluate the quality of your work before I share our core data." Shane's smile froze on his face. "Come on, we're a team. Don't you trust me?" "This isn't an issue of trust," Zoe said. "It's an issue of risk management. Your historical contribution value is 0, so I have no basis on which to assess your ability to deliver. I require a sample to determine your credit rating." Credit rating? I almost spit out my coffee. Shane's face was not happy. "Zoe, you don't have to be so harsh about it. I've been really busy with the student government. It's not like I was blowing it off on purpose." He switched to his sob story. "My family doesn't have a lot of money, so I need to build my resume with the SGA to get a good job after graduation." Zoe cut him off. "Shane." She opened her phone, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it to face him. It was his Instagram feed from last weekend. He'd posted a picture of himself at Lollapalooza with the caption, "Living my best life." He had a huge, carefree grin on his face. The color drained from Shane's face. In your time allocation model, a music festival took precedence over a team project. That is your personal choice, and I respect it, Zoe said, putting her phone away. However, you must also accept the consequences of that choice. The consequence is that your credit rating is unreliable. Our team's core data will not be accessible to you. But what about my report and my part of the grade? Shane panicked. That's your problem, Zoe said. You can either try to find the data yourself, or you can withdraw from the project. Shane was utterly defeated. He probably never imagined anyone would call his bluff so completely. He slunk out of the lab. The next day, the presentation he submitted was a joke, vague, empty, with data copied from random websites that didn't even make sense. The three of us quietly removed his name from the project submission. In the end, our project received the highest grade in the class. The professor praised it in front of everyone, highlighting our detailed data and rigorous logic. I looked over at Zoe, sitting next to me with her usual neutral expression, and I had only one thought. If I ever start a company, she's the first person I'm bringing on board. With her around, you'd never have to worry about dead weight. The number of guys trying to ask Zoe out could form a line from one end of campus to the other. But Zoe was like a perfect insulator. Any romantic spark that got near her was instantly extinguished. In the spring of our sophomore year, a jock from the athletics department named Gavin King launched an all-out offensive. He sent flowers, he sent gift baskets, he played his guitar under her dorm window. He tried every cringeworthy move from a cheesy rom-com. Zoe ignored it all. The flowers were distributed to the janitorial staff by the dorm's front desk manager. The snacks, she claimed, were too high in calories and would disrupt her metabolism, so I got to eat them all. As for the guitar serenade, Zoe called campus security that night and filed a noise complaint. Gavin was undeterred. He probably thought Zoe was just playing hard to get. Finally, on a sunny afternoon, he decided to pull out all the stops. He got a bunch of his friends together, and on the main plaza in front of the lecture halls, they arranged 999 pizza boxes into the shape of a giant heart. Then, holding a megaphone, Gavin stood in the center of the heart, and, as Zoe was walking out of class, began to profess his love. Zoe Vance, I'm in love with you. Be my girlfriend. A huge crowd of onlookers immediately formed, whistling and cheering. I was right next to Zoe, and I was so embarrassed I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. I thought Zoe would just turn and walk away, but she didn't. She stopped and looked at Gavin, her expression serious. Everyone thought this was a good sign. Even Gavin started to smile, sensing victory. Then Zoe spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, but thanks to Gavin's still active megaphone, it carried across the entire plaza. Gavin King. First, thank you for the positive sentiment you've expressed toward me. However, I must decline your request. Gavin's smile froze. Why? He asked, his voice cracking. Zoe adjusted her glasses. Your proposal lacks the necessary supporting evidence. Supporting evidence. Gavin stammered. Correct, Zoe said. The establishment of a stable romantic relationship should be based on 3 fundamental metrics. 1. Value system compatibility. 2. Future planning synergy. And 3. Daily behavioral pattern alignment. Your decision to make a grand, public declaration indicates a preference for high-profile, emotional displays. I, on the other hand, prefer low-profile, logical communication. This is a behavioral pattern mismatch. You have repeatedly utilized public resources for private emotional expression, such as the serenade outside my dormitory and today's pizza box incident. This demonstrates that your sense of communal and social responsibility differs significantly from my own. This is a value system incompatibility. Third, and most importantly, I have reviewed your course schedule and your public social media activity. Your GPA last semester was a 2. 3. With the majority of your time allocated to athletic training and social events. My 5-year plan involves pursuing a doctorate in theoretical physics at the Princeton Institute for Advanced Study. Our future trajectories have almost zero intersection. This is a lack of future planning synergy. By the time Zoe finished, the plaza was dead silent. Everyone was just staring, mouths agape, as if they were auditing a university lecture. Zoe delivered her conclusion. In summary, your proposal scores below the minimum acceptable threshold on all three core evaluation metrics required to initiate a stable relationship. Therefore, the request is denied. Additionally, she said, pointing at the sea of pizza boxes, according to the campus environmental policy, any waste generated by a large-scale gathering must be cleaned up by the organizers. Please ensure these organic materials are properly disposed of within the next 30 minutes. She turned to me and said, "Let's go." And she just walked away. She left Gavin King standing alone in the middle of 999 pizza boxes, looking like a piece of abandoned performance art. I followed Zoe, trying my best not to burst out laughing. I would bet my entire tuition that Gavin King will never, ever ask out a physics major again. Because he just learned that if you want to talk feelings with him, you'd better be prepared to submit a peer-reviewed paper with a full data analysis first. Zoe won so many scholarships, it was ridiculous. Naturally, that bred jealousy. The most obvious of her haters was the perennial number 2 in our department, a girl named Chloe Chun. Chloe was a top student, but she was always just one step behind Zoe. On the midterm for quantum mechanics, Zoe scored a 99. Chloe got a 97. That 2-point difference was what decided who got the prestigious Chancellor's Scholarship. And just like that, the rumors started. Someone said they saw Zoe meeting with Professor Miller, the one who wrote the exam, right before the test. Someone else said Zoe's family was rich and had donated a building to the university. It all boiled down to one accusation. Zoe had cheated. Chloe never said it outright, but she would drop hints in every conversation. You know, the grade doesn't really matter. It's what you actually learn that counts. So people just get lucky, I guess. The rumor spread until our academic advisor had to call Zoe in for a talk. I asked Zoe what she was going to do. She just said, "Let the bullets fly for a while." I didn't get it. Until the very last day, the scholarship results were open for public comment. That's when Zoe made her move. She didn't go crying to the advisor. She didn't post a lengthy defense on Reddit. She wrote an open letter to the head of the physics department. She printed it out and posted it on the official bulletin board outside the department office, where everyone could see it. The letter's contents were brutally simple. The title was, "Regarding a formal request for public peer review of the 20XX Chancellor's Scholarship Assessment." In the letter, Zoe acknowledged that there were questions regarding her academic integrity. She didn't offer any defense. She made only one request: to ensure fairness and transparency and to eliminate all doubt. I, Zoe Vance, hereby volunteer to forfeit my score on the midterm examination. I would also like to issue a formal academic challenge to the student with the second highest score, Ms. Chloe Chun. The subject of the challenge will be the entirety of the quantum mechanics midterm exam. The format will be a public forum, moderated by Professor Miller and open to all faculty and students of the department. Ms. Chun and I will take the stage simultaneously to present, analyze, and debate the problem-solving methodologies, theoretical underpinnings, and practical applications of every single question on the exam. Should my analysis contain any errors or prove to be less thorough than Ms. Chen's, I will voluntarily withdraw from consideration for the scholarship and accept any and all disciplinary action from the university. If, however, my work is found to be sound, I expect the university to clear my name and to take appropriate action against those who have spread false rumors and damaged the academic integrity of this institution. The letter was signed with Zoe's name. The signature was bold and unflinching. The moment that letter went up, the entire physics department exploded. This wasn't just clearing her name. This was a public execution. This was putting Chloe on a stage in front of everyone and academically dismembering her. Chloe completely freaked out. She probably barely understood how she'd gotten a 97 herself. The idea of having to go on stage and debate the methodology of every question with Zoe. It was a death sentence. She folded instantly. She ran to the bulletin board and tried to rip the letter down, but a crowd of students had already gathered and stopped her. She went to the department head, crying, saying it was all a big misunderstanding. But it was too late. The situation had blown up, and the department had to respond to quell the controversy. In the end, the department head himself presided over an academic seminar. Zoe really did get on stage. By herself, in front of a projector, she went through that 99-point exam, from the first question to the last. Her logic was flawless, her citations impeccable. She even pointed out 2 more efficient ways to solve one of the problems. The professor who wrote the exam sat in the front row, nodding in approval. As for Chloe, she never showed up. She called in sick. The truth was obvious to everyone. After that day, nobody ever dared to question Zoe's grades again. I heard Chloe ended up transferring to another major. That night, Zoe and I were eating in the dining hall. "Weren't you afraid she'd actually go through with it?" I asked. Zoe took a sip of her soup. "My gamble wasn't that she would lack the courage. My gamble was based on the innate human fear of the unknown. For her, the contents of that exam were an unknown territory filled with terror." She put down her spoon and looked at me. "For me," she said, "that's my home turf." In that moment, I felt like she was glowing. It was the kind of light that exposes every monster and charlatan and sends them scattering into the darkness. In Zoe's world, the concept of relatives didn't seem to exist. Or rather, her definition was independent social units connected by blood, with whom a safe operational distance must be maintained. In our junior year, one of Zoe's distant cousins got it in Northwood. On move-in day, Zoe's aunt, the cousin's mother, showed up at our dorm room, laden with bags. The aunt was incredibly effusive, grabbing Zoe's hands and fussing over her. "Zoe, honey, I'm counting on you to look after Fifi. You're sisters. You have to help each other out." The cousin, Felicia, or Fifi, hid behind her mom, looking at us shyly. Zoe just nodded and said, "Okay." I thought that would be the end of it. I was hopelessly naive. For the next month, Fifi became Zoe's permanent shadow. In the morning, Fifi would show up at our door, asking Zoe to grab her breakfast. During the day, Fifi would text Zoe, asking for lecture notes or for help with her homework. At night, Fifi would call, saying her laptop had crashed and she had a paper due for her club, and could Zoe please just write a little bit of it for her? The worst was when Fifi got into an argument with someone in her sorority and came to Zoe in tears, demanding that Zoe go and sort it out for her. It was exhausting just to watch. "Can't you just say no?" I asked Zoe. "I'm collecting data," Zoe replied. "What?" "I am logging the frequency and type of her assistance requests, as well as the time cost incurred by me for each request." She showed me an Excel spreadsheet on her laptop. It was a dense log of every single one of Fifi's interruptions over the past 30 days. There was even a column titled Equivalent Market Labor Value, calculated in US dollars. The 1-month total came to $2,350. "The data sample is now sufficient," Zoe said, closing the laptop. That weekend, the aunt arrived with Fifi in tow, this time bearing a fruit basket. As usual, the aunt started with a barrage of praise. "Our Zoe is just so capable. Fifi is so lucky to have you. That girl just can't function without you." Zoe said nothing. She simply retrieved 2 printed documents and a pen from her desk and handed them to her aunt. "Auntie, this is a scholastic and life mutual assistance agreement that I've drafted for Felicia." The smile on her aunt's face evaporated. She looked down at the document. I leaned over to get a look too. The agreement laid out, in excruciating detail, the services Zoe was willing to provide. These included, but were not limited to, academic tutoring services, $80/hour. Lecture note compilation services, $50/course/module. Ghostwriting services, non-academic $100/1000 words. Emotional support and counseling services, $60/30 minute session with overages billed by the minute. Interpersonal dispute resolution services, starting at $100 depending on complexity. At the very end, there was a family plan. In consideration of our blood relation, a 20% discount can be applied to all listed services. A monthly retainer package is available at a 25% discount. Which payment plan would you prefer? Zoe's tone was that of a cheerful sales associate. Her aunt's face was a kaleidoscope of conflicting emotions. "Zoe, what is this? We're family. You shouldn't talk about money. It hurts the relationship." "Not talking about money is what hurts the relationship," Zoe countered. "My time is my most valuable asset. I invested in study and research to advance my future career. To transfer that asset to another individual, without compensation and without limit, is not help. It is depletion. Familial bonds require boundaries. A relationship without boundaries is a form of emotional extortion. This agreement constitutes the boundary I am setting for our relationship. Fifi was on the verge of tears. Cousin, I just thought, you were supposed to be nice to me. No one is supposed to be nice to anyone, Zoe said, looking directly at her. Supposed to are the two most irrational words in the English language. I don't remember exactly how the aunt and Fifi left that day. I just remember that they never came back. After that, Zoe's life became much, much quieter. I honestly believe every family should have a copy of Zoe's mutual assistance agreement on hand. It's the perfect cure for every "I'm doing this for your own good" but we're family. The university hired a new academic advisor, Ms. Bright. Ms. Bright was young, kind, and fresh out of grad school, radiating a sort of doe-eyed optimism. Her first order of business was to have one-on-one meetings with all the students of interest. Zoe, of course, was at the top of her list. Zoe, I've been looking over your file. Your academic performance is truly outstanding. Ms. Bright began with a warm smile. Zoe nodded but said nothing. However, Ms. Bright continued, shifting her tone. I have heard from some other students that you can be, well, a bit introverted, that you don't really socialize. Is that so? Zoe said. It was impossible to tell if it was a question or a statement. Well, you're not in the student government, you haven't joined any clubs, and you rarely attend class events. This could be a disadvantage for you when it's time to integrate into the professional world. Ms. Bright was now in full-on guidance counselor mode. College isn't just a place to learn. It's a platform to build your social skills and develop your emotional intelligence. You should try to smile more, open up, and connect with your peers. I happened to be in the office dropping off some paperwork and pretended to be busy organizing it so I could eavesdrop. I watched Zoe listen intently to everything Ms. Bright said. Then she asked a question. Ms. Bright, your use of the term emotional intelligence, what is its precise definition? Ms. Bright blinked. Well, it's the ability to manage your emotions and navigate interpersonal relationships. Understood, Zoe said. In that case, could you please tell me the correlation coefficient between high emotional intelligence and career success for a theoretical physicist? What is its statistical weight? Do you have any industry data or peer-reviewed studies to support your assertion? Ms. Bright's smile began to falter. I was speaking in a more general sense. Generalities do not apply to specialized fields, Zoe interjected. Theoretical physics is a discipline that relies heavily on independent thought, logical deduction, and intense focus. Excessive socializing would dilute my concentration and consume valuable work time, making it a net negative. Einstein, Dirac, Newton, biographical analysis indicates their social competency scores were all well below the societal average. This did not impede their monumental achievements. Ms. Bright's mouth was now hanging slightly open. Zoe continued, You advised me to smile more. Can you please describe the function relating this specific facial muscle contraction to my research capabilities? Is it a positive or negative correlation? If you cannot provide quantitative data, then your advice is, to me, an invalid command. As for integrating into the professional world, Zoe adjusted her glasses. Society is, in essence, a value exchange system based on a division of labor. My value is derived from my academic ability. As long as that ability is sufficiently high, society will provide a corresponding position for me. I have no need to integrate passively through an inefficient method like fitting in. I choose to actively define my relationship with society through my professional value. The office was completely silent. Even I felt like I'd been hit by stray bullets. Ms. Bright looked like she was in shock. In all her years of teaching, she'd probably never had a student ask her to show her data. Finally, Zoe stood up and gave Ms. Bright a slight bow. Thank you for your concern, Ms. Bright. If that will be all, I need to get back to the lab. And with that, she turned and left. From beginning to end, her expression and tone had been perfectly calm, perfectly polite. But every word she'd spoken was like a scalpel, dissecting Ms. Bright's vague, feel-good advice until there was nothing left. I looked at Ms. Bright's dazed expression and thought to myself, Welcome to the real world, ma'am. In this world, some people don't drink the Kool-Aid. They only read the instruction manual. 9. In our junior year, it was time for the Student Government Association elections. Normally, this was the kind of thing Zoe and I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. We both actively avoided the types of people who wore blazers to class and spoke in bureaucratic buzzwords. But this year, one of the candidates for SGA president was Gavin King. Yes, the same Gavin King who had tried to win Zoe over with an army of pizza boxes. The other main candidate was a literature major, a gifted orator whose campaign speech was a masterpiece of flowery, inspiring prose. Gavin's campaign slogan was, "Give me a chance to bring passion back to campus." The literature major's was, "Lighting the way for every student with the torch of humanity." I was bored just listening to them. The day before the election, Zoe suddenly said to me, "Jake, sign me up." "Sign you up for what?" "SGA president." I almost fell out of my chair. "Are you insane? You hate this stuff more than anyone." "I used to," Zoe said, "but I reviewed this year's financial reports. The SGA has an activity budget of over $200,000 with ambiguous oversight and non-transparent approval processes. I estimate the resource waste rate to be over 40%. That money, if reallocated to purchasing new lab equipment or expanding the library's digital subscriptions, would have a much higher return on investment." She looked at me, and her eyes were gleaming. I need administrative control. And so, on Election Day, the list of candidates included a name that made everyone's jaws drop: Zoe Vance, Department of Physics. Gavin and the literature major both gave great speeches. One was full of fire and passion. The other was warm and empathetic. Both received huge rounds of applause. Then it was Zoe's turn. She wasn't wearing a suit, just her usual casual clothes. She didn't have a speech memorized. All she had was a flash drive. She plugged it into the laptop. The projector screen didn't show inspiring photos or beautiful words. It showed a single image, a massive, complex, intimidatingly intricate flowchart. The title at the top read, "A proposal for the re-engineering of SGA resource allocation and efficiency improvement." Zoe picked up a laser pointer. "Hello, I'm Zoe Vance. I'm not here to talk about feelings or ideals. I'm here to talk about two things: money and work. This is an analysis of the SGA's expenditures over the last 3 years." She clicked a button, and a series of pie charts and bar graphs appeared next to the flowchart. "This is my proposed new budget approval process. By implementing a system of cross-audits and project-based evaluations, we can reduce non-essential spending by 35%. This is a diagnostic of the current event planning workflow. The average response time is too long, and the division of labor is ambiguous. This is my optimization plan. By introducing KPIs and assigning direct responsibility, we can increase operational efficiency by 50%. She just stood there, pointing at that cold, complex diagram, and spoke for 10 minutes. Not one wasted word, not one adjective, just data, processes, models, and solutions. At first, the audience was whispering. By the end, the entire auditorium was silent. Everyone was completely stunned. It was like a group of kindergartners were arguing about where to go on a field trip, and a senior project manager walked in and started delivering a formal feasibility report. It was a complete tactical annihilation. Where her speech ended, there was no applause. Everyone had forgotten to clap. In the final vote, Zoe won by a landslide. She was the new SGA president. Gavin and the literature major looked sick. All of their carefully crafted emotional appeals had been rendered as flimsy as a paper napkin in the face of Zoe's flowchart. That night, the campus subreddit exploded. The top post was titled, "Did we just elect a Fortune 500 CEO as our SGA president?" I read the post and smiled. No, you didn't elect a CEO. You elected a Terminator. A logic-driven machine sent to terminate all forms of pointless bureaucracy and empty platitudes. 10. The first thing Zoe did as SGA president was to rename the arts, athletics, and outreach committees. They were now Project Group Alpha, Project Group Bravo, and the Resource Development Team. Next, she eliminated all paper-based forms and implemented an online management system. If you wanted funding for any event, you had to submit a detailed project proposal through the system. The proposal had to include a target audience analysis, projected KPIs, a cost-benefit breakdown, and a risk mitigation plan. The system would automatically generate an initial score based on the proposal's viability and completeness. Anything below a 60 was instantly rejected. Within 2 weeks, the SGA's productivity more than doubled. But so did the complaints. The new president has no soul. Writing a proposal is harder than writing a term paper. Seriously, she want me to create a user persona for the freshman welcome party? The users are the freshmen. The grumbling reached its peak during the planning for the senior class trip. Traditionally, the SGA organized a big trip for graduating seniors. In past years, they just voted on a destination and the majority ruled. This always left a large, unhappy minority, usually the people who wanted a beach trip versus the people who wanted to go hiking. The head of Project Group Bravo, formerly the Athletics Committee, a guy named Ryan Wallace, brought 2 proposals to Zoe. Option A, a trip to Miami. 5-star hotel, budget of $3,000 per person. Option B, a hiking and camping trip in the Appalachian Mountains. Cabins and tents, budget of $1,500 per person. President Vance, we're stuck. The vote is split almost exactly 50-50. What should we do? Ryan asked, clearly frustrated. Zoe took the proposals and studied them for 2 minutes. Both options are rejected. Why? Ryan asked, confused. Because you're attempting to apply a monolithic solution to a diversified demand group. Your entire premise is flawed. Zoe opened her laptop. The purpose of a trip is not the destination, but the experience. Different individuals have different experiential needs. Some require relaxation. Some require challenge. Some require social engagement. Your job is not to force a binary choice upon them. It is to design a portfolio of products that can satisfy multiple tiers of demand. She quickly sketched out a quadrant chart on the screen. The x-axis was budget, and the y-axis was experience intensity. Then she plotted 4 points on the chart. Product 1, the island retreat. Target user, high budget, low intensity. Price point, $3,000. Product 2, the historic town exploration. Target user, mid-budget, mid-intensity. Price point, $2,000. Product 3, the mountain expedition. Target user, low budget, high intensity. Price point, $1,000. Product 4, the urban staycation. Target user, minimal budget, high social need. Price point, $300, primarily for group meals and local event tickets. Launch all 4 options simultaneously. We don't organize one massive group. We organize teams based on the project they choose. Let every student select their own package based on their budget and their needs. This way, we are not organizing a trip. We are providing a customizable experience service. Ryan stared at the chart on the screen, his mouth hanging open wide enough to fit an egg. He had probably never imagined that a senior trip could be analyzed like a corporate product launch. But that would be a nightmare to organize, Ryan said. It won't be, Zoe said, pulling up a new set of documents. I have already created a standard operating procedure, or SOP, for each product. This includes vendor selection criteria, contract templates, risk management checklists, and personnel allocation suggestions. All you and your team need to do is execute the process. Ryan was speechless. He took the SOP printouts from her like they were sacred texts and walked out of the office. That year's senior trip became the highest rated in the university's history. There were no arguments, no compromises. Everyone went exactly where they wanted to go. I was on a historic town trip, and I got pictures from friends sunbathing in Miami and saw posts from the hiking group groaning about their sore muscles. Everyone was happy, and I finally understood Zoe's logic. It wasn't that she didn't have feelings. It was that she believed the best way to care for people was to let every single one of them be comfortable in their own skin. And the way to achieve that wasn't by trying to please everyone. It was with precise, efficient, and unimpeachable logic. I started to wonder what other solutions Zoe had stored in that incredible brain of hers. The way she analyzed and solved problems wasn't like a student anymore. It wasn't even like a normal human being. For graduation, the university was planning a massive farewell gala. The director of the event was the literature major, the one who was a master of emotional, inspiring speeches. The day before the gala, disaster struck. The entire AV system, the computers and servers that controlled the background videos and music, crashed completely. The IT staff worked on it for hours and discovered the main control system was infected with some kind of malware. They said it would take at least 2 days to fix. But the gala was tomorrow. The director was in tears, pacing back and forth in a panic. The university deans showed up, their faces grim. It looked like months of planning were about to go down the drain. Just when everyone had given up hope, Zoe appeared. She had her usual calm expression and was carrying her usual backpack. "Let me see," she said. One of the IT guys scoffed. "Hey kid, this isn't something you can fix by turning it off and on again. The core code has been corrupted." Zoe ignored him. She walked straight to the control console, sat down, and plugged her own laptop into the system. And then her fingers began to move. I stood behind her, watching the screen. It was just a waterfall of code, scrolling past faster than I could read. I didn't understand a single line of it. The whole room held its breath, just watching her. It only took 10 minutes. Seriously, just 10 minutes. Zoe stopped typing. She unplugged her laptop and turned to the IT guy. "It's fixed." He walked over, skeptical, and rebooted the main system. A miracle happened. The system booted up perfectly. All functions were restored. The room erupted in cheers. The gala director rushed over and grabbed Zoe's hands. "Zoe, you're a genius. You're my hero." The deans came over, patting her on the shoulder, showering her with praise. Zoe just gently pulled her hands away. "It was a malware," she said. Everyone went quiet again, looking at her. The system has a fundamental design flaw in its underlying architecture. When a call command for a video file and an audio file has a latency differential of more than 0.01 seconds, it triggers an erroneous loop, which causes a memory overflow and a total system crash. She looked at the IT guy, whose face was now pale. "Yesterday, you replaced one of the video files with a higher resolution version, correct?" He nodded numbly. "That video file was too large. Its read speed was 0.3 seconds too slow. That's why the system crashed. What I did wasn't virus removal. I simply added a single line of code to increase the latency fault tolerance threshold to 0.5 seconds." She paused for a moment, then delivered a line that I will remember for the rest of my life. "The system itself never had a bug. Your operational error was the bug." With that, she shouldered her backpack and walked out, leaving a room full of stunned, silent people in her wake. I walked with her across the campus. The evening breeze felt good. I finally worked up the courage to ask the question that had been bugging me for years. "Zoe, what are you?" I wasn't joking. A 21-year-old college student who understands management theory, psychology, and contract law, and can also debug a complex server system in 10 minutes? It didn't make sense. Zoe stopped walking and turned to face me. The light from a lamppost glinted off her glasses, and I couldn't see her eyes. She was silent for a long, long time, so long that I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she spoke. Her voice was as level as always, but I thought I detected something else in it. A frequency I had never heard before. Something like a sigh. "Jake, I'm not a what? I'm a project. A project." I felt like my own brain needed a hard reset. "Yes," Zoe said. "An experimental initiative, codenamed Project Athena." We were sitting on a bench by the campus lake. It was late, and we were completely alone. And then Zoe told me a story more unbelievable than any science fiction movie. Her parents were two of the world's leading scientists, specializing in artificial intelligence and sociology. She wasn't their biological daughter. She was an orphan they had adopted as an infant. But they hadn't adopted her out of love. They had adopted her for an experiment. The experiment's central question was this: can a human being, raised in an environment of pure rationality and absolute logic, solve complex social problems more efficiently than a person raised in a conventional environment? From her earliest childhood, Zoe's education was anything but normal. She had no fairy tales, only logic textbooks. She had no toys, only complex building models and programming kits. She was forbidden from any exposure to things that might trigger irrational emotional responses. Every decision she made had to be based on data analysis and cost-benefit calculations. Her entire life had been one long, meticulously designed, and strictly controlled social experiment. So all of those times, it wasn't you being cold, it was my programming, Zoe finished for me. Rejecting the donation drive was based on a poor, cost-benefit ratio. Dealing with Mia was about terminating a high-loss, inefficient social connection. Running for SGA president was to acquire resource control for efficiency optimization. Everything I do is based on my core algorithm. Seek the optimal solution. A chill ran down my spine. This girl in front of me, my desk mate for 3 years, her every action, her every word, might have just been the result of a calculation. What about me? I heard my voice tremble. Are you and I friends because of some kind of calculation? Zoe turned to look at me. She wasn't wearing her glasses anymore. In the moonlight, her eyes were like two deep, dark pools. You're the exception, she said. What do you mean? In my developmental model, all external inputs are supposed to be predictable and quantifiable. My teachers, my classmates, even my so-called parents, I can build a psychological model of their behavior and predict their next actions within 3 seconds. But I can't predict you, Jake. You, she said, are a random variable. You're the one who, after I've calculated the optimal solution, asks me if I'm happy. You're the one who, after I've dealt with a complicated problem, hand me a piece of chocolate. You're the one who, when everyone else thinks I'm a monster, secretly whispers, "That was brilliant." In my database, there is no corresponding logic for these actions. They have no clear objective. Their return on investment cannot be quantified. From an algorithmic perspective, they are complete and utter redundant operations. Zoe looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes that looked like confusion. I've been analyzing you for 3 years. I have built over 10,000 behavioral models for you, and every single one is rendered obsolete by the next day. You cannot be predicted. You cannot be defined. You are the only and the most beautiful bug of my entire system. When she said the word beautiful, her voice was barely a whisper. I just stared at her. All my stupid little jokes, my impulsive actions. In her perfectly ordered world, they had created ripples I could never have imagined. The experiment. It must be almost over, right? I asked. Yes. Zoe nodded. Graduation is the end point. They will collect all the data and evaluate the product. And then what? Then the identity of Zoe Vance will be erased. I will be transferred to a secure research facility to participate in higher-level projects. Or I will be decommissioned if they determine the experiment was a failure. My heart sank. How could it be a failure? I said, my voice rising. You're smarter and more capable than anyone here. Capable does not equal successful, Zoe said. The ultimate goal of the experiment was to test the universal applicability of pure rationality. My data shows that while I solve problems, I also cause social isolation and emotional alienation. From the sociability metric, I may be considered a failed product. When she said the words failed product, for the very first time, I heard a trace of sadness in her voice. I looked at her, and I suddenly made a decision that felt completely insane. I reached out and took her hand. It was cold. Zoe. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, word by word, tomorrow, at the graduation ceremony. You're leaving with me. Where will we go? I don't know. I answered honestly, somewhere with no algorithms, no data, and no project reports. Somewhere you don't have to be the optimal solution. Somewhere you can make mistakes. Somewhere you can perform as many redundant operations as you want. What's the probability of success? She asked automatically. 0, I said, or 100. Zoe looked at me. She didn't pull her hand away, and in her eyes, those two deep, dark pools. I thought I saw a flicker, a ripple. That option, she whispered. It does not exist in my system. I know, I smiled. It does now.